right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our March 2nd work session. First order of business, Pledge of Allegiance. That's going to be led by Ms. Sheila Brett. Thank you, Ms. Bratton. All right, next thing is moment of silence. If you all would join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. All right. Any questions on the agenda? All right. What about the consent agenda? Any questions? All right. Moving on to number 8.
All right, number 8. All right, Advantage XPO renewal agreement found on tab 2. Brooklyn County Schools currently contracts with Advantage XPO for substitute teacher services. Advantage XPO will maintain their current bill rate contract for the 2021-2022 school year. And Mr. Smith, is it Mr.?
Yes, sir. Thank you. May I remove my mask when I speak at the microphone? Okay, thank you. So I'm Joshua Smith. I'm the Senior Vice President for Advantage XPO. I've been with the organization for 17 years, and I want to thank the board members for allowing us to participate in tonight's meeting. Thank you all very much. We appreciate our partnership with Rutherford County and are proud to represent the district in the management of the current substitute teacher program. The work is truly impactful, and we strive to positively impact lives through opportunity daily. I would like to thank the district leadership and administrators, Dr. Anthony, Mr. Spurlock, and Mr. Beaudry, the school secretaries that work with our program leadership team regularly. Thank you. Most importantly, to our substitutes, the wonderful people that make all the things possible daily. We could not do this without you. We are honored to have you as part of the Advantage XPO family, and from the bottom of our heart, we thank you. 2020 was a year that presented a host of challenges for the education sector. From school closures to remote learning to safety protocols and quarantines, we were walking through something together, building upon the path and navigating the way forward. Through adversity, we found a way. Our CEO, Gino Catolo, will often speak to the philosophy of our U.S. Marines: improvise, adapt, overcome. We will face hardship in life, and we did as a nation, but we will never give up. As we look forward, we know the path may continue to change, and with that, we will continue to improvise, adapt, and overcome. We are thankful for our partnership with Rutherford County and are asking for renewal for the upcoming school year. Thank you for this time, and thank you once again for all those who participate and make a difference daily. Thank you.
Yeah.
At this time, are there any questions from the board that we can answer?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for being here. I appreciate you taking the time out. I have 2 questions, and I know this year has been crazy, but I just want for clarity for myself.
Yes, ma'am.
One is advertising. We obviously are in this community. I'm not seeing a tremendous amount of advertising, so I'd like to know a little bit more about your advertising efforts, and are you going to amend those moving forward? How can we help you as a board recruit subs so that we can be more successful together?
Absolutely. You know, recruitment has not been as much of a challenge as participation. In fact, since July of 2020, we have hired over 345 new substitutes for the program. Since our inception in August of 2019, we've hired over 1,300 substitutes for the program. So what we're facing now is a bit of a challenge in that our participation levels with the active subpopulation are decreasing. And I pulled statistics in anticipation for this meeting and this question. I looked at the second week of January in 2020, and I also looked at the second week in January of 2021. The second week of January 2020, we had 358 active subs participating that week, meaning 358 different subs in the classroom. The same week in the year 2021, we had 205. So what we're seeing is with the 350 we've added since July, we've had 250 of our existing subs go into what we call an inactive status, meaning that they've pulled themselves off of the roster for a number of reasons. Most predominantly, it's concern for health and well-being. But secondly, with the remote learning that was in place, many of them had children at home, and so they weren't able to be in the classrooms. And so from a recruitment standpoint, we really have a two-pronged philosophy. So we use grassroots recruiting, working with local organizations, colleges, et cetera, and we do that in partnership with Dr. Anthony. We also use digital recruitment marketing, and so we've begun to leverage the Twitter platform for Rutherford County. Mrs. Janet Lee, our program manager, has actually been on a couple of videos in that platform, and we continue to use that to update potential candidates. But we also have a very robust investment into the digital media platforms. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, we're looking at Instagram, we're looking at Career Builder, Monster, and those are all enterprise-wide sponsorships that we have. Every single one of our jobs that we post for Advantage XPO specific to the Rutherford County school system are sent out to hundreds of different sites. Some of them may not be geographically aligned to Rutherford County, but we are able to dial in and make sure that those jobs are seen by as many people as possible. So we're going to continue to invest there. We've taken up partnerships with many virtual hiring event platforms, and so there's a number, Brazen, Indeed, Hire, a couple of platforms that we've used to be able to reach a broader target audience of those that may be concerned about coming into an office, and certainly as a result of some of the social distancing requirements, we can't host large hiring events in our Rutherford County office, and so we've turned to a virtual platform. We've also invested heavily into communication technology. So Allio is a requisition platform chatbot that engages applicants as they come to our landing page. It will help navigate them and walk them through the process of becoming an employee of Rutherford County. And we also invest in Sense Messaging, which is an AI platform that allows us to constantly stay in communication with our potential candidates and applicants, as well as our active employees in the system. We recognize that recruiting will continue to be a major part of our success with Rutherford County, and we don't have any intention of backing off. The other big thing that we've seen a reduction in this year over prior year is the referral program. We have an Advantage XPO funded referral bonus program that will pay referred candidates $50 per referral they make into the district. So as long as those individuals work for, I believe it's a 30-day period, the individual that referred them will be eligible for a $50 incentive bonus paid fully by Advantage XPO. We did see a softening in that in 2020 into 2021. We didn't pull the program back. We kept it in place. We just have not seen as much attraction to that. We also continue to invest very heavily into our sub-retention program. And so I provided some statistics here. Since September of 2020, we have paid over $23,000 in performance-based bonuses to the substitute population, and that was to a total of over 300 substitutes. Just to remind everybody here that performance-based incentive program is really driven to engage participation. We're seeing fewer and fewer subs come into the system that are looking to work 3, 4, 5 days a week. And most often it's Mondays and Fridays where we have the biggest struggle. And so we created a program that is really intended to drive participation. And so long as somebody is able to work 14 days in a calendar month, we pay them $75 per month. And that again is 100% funded by Advantage XPO. Since the inception of the program in 2019, we've paid over $105,000 in performance incentive bonuses on behalf of Advantage XPO to our substitutes. And so those two collectively are going to be very important for us. Getting talent in the door is the first step of the process. Keeping them with us and working is the second, equally as important step in the process.
Thank you. I appreciate that information. And you answered my other question about the bonuses.
Yes, ma'am.
Being in the community subs, and I think it's a great program. I think that it's a great opportunity for our college students particularly to get into the classroom and see if this is really where they want. I have a couple children myself who are pursuing education. The bonuses are of concern. Has there been a restructure in the way we've done bonuses? I have heard more of the complaints about pay, which I know is not your guys' issue, it's ours, but the distribution and the qualification for bonuses has tapered off, and so that has been the reason why some of the people that I have spoken to have stepped away from subbing.
And there was, when we took this program, or when we were awarded this program, rather, in fall of 2019, there was no bonus program. There was a premier sub-program that was in place, and we actually honored that program. Even though our pricing was not set up to accommodate, essentially what ended up, the 20 to 25 individuals that were in that premier subcategory, we were self-funding anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 a month just to keep that program afloat, as to not cause undue stress to the schools they were supporting. In addition to that, we also, with the turning on of the program, the incumbent didn't provide us with the existing subpopulation, and so we had to rebuild from zero. And as a result, we ended up paying $45,000 in retention bonuses in the first 2 to 3 months of the program going live. Once we got through that initial phase, we restructured it to focus more on not so much candidate attraction, but participation. That is a driving factor, and it's got to be something that we continue, because if we don't have people in the classroom 3, 4, 5 days a week, there's just simply too much demand in the schools to keep up. And so we're seeing a smaller segment of teachers that are actually working more and more, and fewer teachers that are working more than 2 days a week. And so I think that as we look to the upcoming school year, we want to continue to invest in participation. I do think that, that we're in a unique situation with the economic climate. We've had stimulus challenges, and we face that across the country, right? That's not exclusive to Rutherford County. And those are things that we continue to navigate. I think that it's driving the right behavior, and what it looks like in the coming year. The program will stay intact, and what the definition of that program looks like, we'll be happy to work with Doug and Dr. Anthony on to make sure that we've got the right approach there.
Thank you, I appreciate the information.
You're welcome.
Any other board members? Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Board.
None.
Our number 9 is our charter school. Per board policy, the board shall name the members of the team at its meeting in March of each year. The board shall designate a chairman to review the team as a contact person for answering questions about the application process and receiving applications. Dr. Sullivan, you want to name those at this time?
I just figured we could do that on Thursday. I'm still waiting on one parent to confirm.
Gotcha.
It's okay.
Any questions, board? All right. Moving to number 10.
Our number 10 is the 2021-2022 calendar change due to federal, state, and local election cycle. A date change is needed to newly adopted 2021-2022 school calendar. October 20th, which is an in-service day, professional development day, needs to be a regularly scheduled school day, and May the 3rd, which is a previously scheduled school day, will become an in-service professional development day.
Any questions there? Moving on to number 11.
All right, number 11 is about the state funded learning loss program for instruction summer programming, with the exception of high school. So go ahead, Dr. Sullivan, if you will.
Yeah, so in your blue folder, it's the very first thing. So I wanted to give you the information and then give you some time to kind of ask questions if you needed. First, we're extremely excited for this opportunity, not just for our students, but for our district as a whole, because this will allow us an opportunity the state calls it learning loss. I don't necessarily believe it's a learning loss as much as it's accelerating where we already are. And so that's something that we're excited about. If you'll flip to the second page, just wanted to kind of review what we are looking at. This comes from the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act. There are 3 camps, and what I'm talking about first is all strictly kindergarten through 8th grade. The 3 camps are a summer learning camp, a learning loss bridge camp, and then you'll see I marked out the stream mini camp because we submitted a waiver, and I'll go over what that allows us to be able to do here in just a minute. We are going to use the grade the student just completed as our basis for where students are. So if a student is a kindergartner, they will go back to kindergarten basically for the summer before they move on to first grade. It didn't make a lot of sense for us to promote them to a first grade with a first grade teacher since they haven't lost that first grade material yet. For locations, well, this has been a continuous change in some of our locations, but we finalized those today. We are connecting those with summer feeding program sites so that we will have feeding at all of our locations. And we tried to come up with, instead of having random sites and students attending all over the county, we organized them into pods, and so a school will have several other sites assigned with them. And you'll see those on the next page that I'll get to in a second. But the first example is elementary, is Barfield. Barfield will be the host site, and they will house students and teachers from Barfield, Buchanan, and Christiana. And we felt like this was a good idea to be able to not just only have the students together with students they knew, but also build some connections with teachers and administrators and kids throughout the entire district. The next thing you will see is high school is not addressed. That was left out, but we are using some of our ESSER 2.0 funding to provide that opportunity for high school. And so on the right-hand side, you'll see the logistics. We have 9 elementary sites, we have 5 middle sites, and then 2 high school options, but only 1 brick and mortar site right now. And I'll go over those in detail here in just a minute. If you flip to the next page, and these are just 2 basic slides to show you kind of where the host sites are and the student populations. And this is very much a placeholder. We are funding it at 1 to 15. And so for 6 grade levels at the elementary K through 5, you'll see we have 4 teachers per grade, PE, secretary, EAs. We can add or decrease teachers based on the interest we get from students. And so if we need to take a teacher away or add a teacher to site, we very easily can do that. The next page is just the rest of the elementary sites. You'll see that we have one of these again for every one of our elementary schools as needed. The next page is the middle school. And so the middle school, the state calls this the bridge camp for some reason, but this is a bridge camp. And it is very similar in that we have our 5 sites and we have all schools assigned to 1 site. These will all be feeding sites as well. We have a site director, 2 teachers per grade level, 2 math, 2 ELA, a PE, a STEM, and the secretary. And again, same with enrollment. If we need to add or decrease based on student enrollment, we absolutely can.
Dr. Sullivan, before you
Yes.
go any further, would you identify how we will do our priority students?
Yeah, it's about 3 more pages.
Later
We'll
on.
go over all. Yep. On the next is high school. And so high school, we were looking at several things here. The first one is providing a brick and mortar option for our students who did not meet a qualifying score to earn a credit, and it was too low for them in board policy and state policy to do credit recovery. So these are our students who really struggled for various reasons this year, and they need to be in person. That will all be held at Blackman High School. We then have an option for students who performed, but they didn't perform well enough to be able to earn a credit. And we're going to run that through every one of our high schools, and that'll be credit recovery at every one of our comprehensive high schools. We will have a content area teacher and a graduation coach or school counselor assigned to each one of those sites to be able to help with that. We are also talking about bringing students in for the summer because we know that they weren't necessarily successful in a completely online environment, so we're going to have a mixture of the two for that credit recovery. The last part, we know that students are going to want to earn a credit to get ahead, and this is something we discussed today. We were originally going to run this through our Rutherford County Virtual School, but quite frankly, the cost was pretty astronomical. It was $750 per a credit to run it through the virtual school. That would keep it NCAA approved, and we need that for our students. If we used our own Rutherford County teacher, it would be only $110, but then the courses are not NCAA approved. And that may only apply to a couple of our students, but we want to make sure anything we offer is absolutely NCAA approved and not take that from them. So we're actually going to, after we open up the summer school site, do those students trying to get ahead in person at Blackman High School as well. And I'll kind of go over some specifics of that. Just to give you the camp details very quickly of what this looks like, we received our waiver, so we will be offering it June 1st through June 24th, and this is actually all K5 and K8, so all the way K8. 4 days per week. The only week it is not Monday through Thursday is that very first week, June 1st, because the Monday is Memorial Day, May 31st. So it'll be Tuesday through Friday that first week, and then Monday through Thursday, the 4 weeks. It is 4 days per week. Students will have 6 hours. That's a requirement. They have 2 hours of math, 2 hours of ELA, an hour of intervention, and then an hour of physical activity. And then you'll see the teacher schedules to make sure we have classes and students there as students arrive 6.5 hours. The part to the right is marked out for a stream learning camp. That was going to be an extra hour at the end of this already 6-hour school day, the entire summer. When I mentioned our waiver, K-5 was supposed to be 6 weeks long. We felt like that was extremely long for our students and our teachers after the year they just had, and then go into another year and then offer an additional hour. So it would have been 5 days a week for 6 weeks at 7 hours a day. And we felt that was too much. And so instead, we are moving this mini camp to after school in the fall of 21. And so every elementary school will be able to have 1 hour, a couple days a week of enrichment and tutoring available that we'll be able to fund through this portion of it. And we received the grant for that as well. The next is 6-8, very similar. We're able to run K-5 and 6-8 the same. It was approved by TDOE again to just do 4 days a week, the exact same June 1st through June 24th. The difference, we have 8 to 2 instead of 7:30 to 1:30. A parent was providing transportation. That way they had enough time to get to both sites. And then the last couple things are priority students. The information Mr. Clark was just mentioning that's a little bit different, and we're going to be communicating this to our parents over the next couple of days. We have several things that we have to do with priority students, and this is for K-8. For priority students, we have to identify priority students according to the way the Student Learning Loss Act was put in place. And to do that, we can either test our students again, which we felt like we didn't need to do. We already test them. They will have TCAP. We don't need to test them yet another time in May. So we're using our data from the winter. And any student that scored below the 25th percentile on the screener we already gave them will become a priority student. And so those students and parents will actually be contacted first, that I'll get to in just a second. The third bullet is the one that makes it a little bit difficult. Any student in kindergarten through second grade that attends a school that did not meet 50% ELA proficiency, and this is all taken straight out of the state law, is a priority student. As a state, I think we sit at about 35% proficiency, and so we have quite a few, about 19, I believe, elementary schools that do not meet that 50% proficiency. We're well above the state, but they are not at that 50%. And so we have 19 elementary schools that fall under that priority, so we're just going to say as a district, K-2 students are a priority. It's much easier for us than worrying about the individual schools. And then the fourth bullet, any students identified as economically disadvantaged. You don't have to worry about the JCO. That's kind of for our principals as they're trying to pick this and go through the list. They're also identified as a priority student. And then we felt like we needed to give our principals and coaches and teachers a little bit of buy-in. So any student or that the principals feel like is not meeting it can also be a priority student. I know that's a lot. The priority is probably the hardest part. We have to put that application in place for 30 days before we can open it up to everybody else. And so the next page are just some allocations you can see. We are not going to go into specifics with this, but this is part of our waiver. All this is public information. The funding is made available by TDOE. This comes from ESSER 2.0 from the state level, not our local portion, from the state level. And the one thing it cannot be used for is transportation, which is somewhat frustrating, but we have a fix for that. We will use our own portion of ESSER 2.0 to be able to use that. And so the frustrating part is we are not going to use all of that $2.6 million to run our elementary summer camps. But we cannot use that money for funding, so we're going to have to use some of our other ESSER funding that comes to us and take it away from other areas to fund transportation. So you will also see, again, there's no allocation for high school, so we're picking that up from our ESSER funding. The next is the timeline. We've already completed several of these. We have our site selections down. Our coaches we have met with twice, and our administrators, and we're working in our department on working on those priority lists. For K-8, we are going to identify our priority students by March 12th. We have letters that will go out and then the information on our website on how they will apply to be a priority student. We'll then have registration open for those 4 weeks that are required. We'll have teacher applications, staff selections, and then you'll see open enrollment for any other student that we have spots. We have up to 4,000 spots that we can fill. That number came out of nowhere last week. We didn't know that existed. That is what we were told 4,000 is our minimum to look at. And then we will have everything selected by May 3rd. The very last part is high school. High school is a little bit different, and this isn't on here, but high school, we are looking at, we have to know whether or not students going to earn a credit before we can offer that opportunity. So we do registration usually right after the school year ends. It'll be on the radar in talking to our principals. They're already working with their students who are in jeopardy of failing, but that registration doesn't open until the end of the school year. So any questions about the summer? Before, I know that was a bunch of information, but it has been a long process developing it all.
Thank you very much. Yes, we appreciate it.
Yeah, this will also transpire 2022, 2023, the summer of 2022, 2023.
Yes, and then it is in there that the district is currently, in its current form, the district is supposed to pick up cost after 2023. That's a long ways away, but that's in there.
No other discussion? Okay, let's move into number 11.
All right, number 11, this is what we just got through. Number 12, financial matters. We've been looking at our insurance. I know Doug and Dr. Anthony has attended, and Mr. Young. And we're requesting to form a study committee to review the employee health insurance options. We did meet with Mr. Boulder, and I met with the REA representatives. And Dr. Anthony, was it Monday, Dr. Anthony? Okay, this past Monday? Yesterday? Wednesday, last Wednesday, okay. In response to the request of numerous school employees for the school board to review options for employees' health insurance offerings, and in light of insurance premium increases, we want a study committee to be created. This committee will be made up of a school board member, an REA representative, a certified classroom teacher, a school administrator, the assistant superintendent of budget and finance, the assistant superintendent of human resources, and 2 classified support staff members. This committee will review the following and make the formal recommendation to the Board of Education. They will review the current county employee health insurance plan rates, their coverage, the deductibles, the physician networks. This committee will meet with the county health plan representatives to review these items and have any questions answered about these plans. Also, review the state of Tennessee health insurance plan rates, their coverage deductibles, the physician networks available to the LEAs, and this committee will meet with the state of Tennessee health plan representative to review these items and have any questions answered about these plans. The committee then will report its study findings to the Board of Education with a recommendation after this in-depth study is completed. So basically what we're doing is what our staff and people impacted by it has asked us to do, look at options. Right, Doug? You want to give us a little brief overview? I think y'all may have done it the last time, what this coming year rate is going to be?
At the insurance committee this last week, they announced, the original estimate for the increases for budget purposes for the active employees' health plans were 10% on the premiums. They've come down to 8.5% at this point. So once again, it's still a sizable increase, and we've discussed, when the state says we're going to put a 4% increase in for next year's budget, most people automatically assume that means I'm going to get a 4% pay increase. That, of course, that you folks know is that 4% is based on what the positions funded by BEP, which we are over, and when you have, on top of that, you have a sizable increase in your health insurance, that funding has to help go with for that too, because that BP funding is over half of our revenue for the general purpose school fund. So when you get those type of sizable increases, we saw this last year where we did not have a pay increase because the state pulled the funding for the pay increase. We had a 7.5% average increase for our health plans. Some plans had higher than that, some plans had lower. We had a lot of feedback about that, and I'm sure you knew about that, heard about that. So once again, the thought is we hear our employees and we hear, from board members that we can at least take a look and compare these plans together.
I think what you showed us last board meeting was historically how those increased over time, and it was significant.
It's very sizable. The last 3 years, 3 fiscal years, it's been over 21% increase.
This is well overdue. We need to focus on this and see what we can do to help. It's just been a challenge year after year, and it's going to continue to be a challenge. So, and I think we've already talked about how this is not sustainable. So we've got to look into this and look at it real hard and see how we can help our employees here. Any questions? All right, moving on to number 13.
All right, number 13 is the logo for Plainview Elementary. I think it's included in your packet there. Dr. Gagne is submitting this approval of this logo for the new Plainview Elementary School that will be used for the gymnasium floor as well as other areas. The logo is keeping with the board's selections for colors and mascot.
Any discussion there? Land transfer.
All right, this is land down at the old rock school in Smyrna where it used to stand. I think it's a library now. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir. The library, where the school was, across the street where the gym was.
So what Smyrna is asking is for this piece, this section that was left off the transfer originally, and I'm not sure when that had occurred. It had to be in the late 70s.
Probably about 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say. Anyway, they're requesting this portion of land that's titled in the name of Board of Education. The county wants to convey this attached property to Smyrna for the use for adjoining Smyrna Fire Hall. Engineering and Construction has reviewed and found no reason not to grant this request. So basically, they were requesting a sliver of land that was not in the original deed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and they've been maintaining it and taking care of it ever since, like they owned it, and I don't know how it came to light that they didn't own it, but they don't. So
And I think that what they were looking at may be expanding that fire
I
hall.
think they are looking at expanding it for an EMS or something, but anyway, it came to light they didn't own it.
Is there any issues with this, Mr. Reed? You know anything to add to?
The sliver of property is not big enough to build anything on, so it's adjacent to the fire hall now, so it's not a problem to go ahead and convey that to Smyrna if the board wants to do that.
Mr. Reed, about how much land is it? Just out of curiosity.
I'm not sure. It's less than an acre. It's very, very small.
Any other questions? All right, new bus contract.
All right. You want to come up and go over that, Mr. Lee?
I think I'll sit here, but I do have seeing how
Or Mr.
our
Everett and go over it? Okay.
almost the entire team is here.
All right.
First of all, this process has been a couple of years in the making. I think some of the bus contractors that have been on our committee that we started 2 years ago, that Mr. Young and some of the other board members recommended that we do, to reach out, form a committee, and begin to open dialogue and work with our drivers. Lots of things, fixing a pothole, trimming limbs, things that they weren't able to get taken care of. When we got that committee going, one of the first things we talked about was this day was coming. So they've been preparing. We encouraged the bus drivers, if they could, to formulate some kind of a committee. I think they've done that. They've got about somewhere around 70% of the contractors out there came together, hired a lawyer. That lawyer has worked very well with Ms. Page through this dialogue back and forth. The board asked us to establish a committee, which we did. The committee consisted of Ms. Page, Mr. Reed, Steve Luker, principal at Rockville High School, Mr. Everett, and myself, representing the board. Most of the bus committee's members are back here behind us. I think we've had good dialogue back and forth, and one of the things that we said when we had our first meeting as our contract, we wanted two things. Number one, we wanted a fair and equitable contract. That was number one. Number two, that contract needs to meet or exceed current industry standards. We needed to look out there, and this contract needed to work for any bus contractor that's out there, but especially ours, because we have a lot of them. We have a lot invested in them, and they have a lot invested in us. And thirdly, we wanted this contract to align with the school board policies and procedures. And over time, many years, the existing contract that we're under right now does not align with a lot of our policies and procedures. So we spent a lot of time going through our policies and procedures and building up to this point. Ms. Page and a number of folks, we've adopted new policies and procedures throughout the last 12 months that helped us in that ultimate goal of having a contract that aligns with our policies and procedures. It helps us do better, it protects the drivers, and it protects the students, and that's what we wanted to do. So once we got through our first process of going through the contract and making the changes, we submitted that to the bus contract committee. They spent some time looking at it, came back to us with some, we like this, we don't like that, we like this language, we'd like to do this. We had another couple of meetings and some time to go through those requests, and we came to what's very closely to what you have in front of you tonight. There's been a couple of minor tweaks in the last few days, and that's why it did not get added to the backup until last Friday, because we were working through a few other minor little changes to get to this point. We think we've achieved our goal, and that goal is a fair contract. Sometimes fair does not mean everybody gets what they want, but ultimately it works well for Rutherford County Schools. One of the things that we wanted to do in this contract is we've got to be able to keep our existing contractors. They are our system. This contract allows for those contractors to stay. It gives an opportunity for drivers that have been driving for a contractor for 2 years that want to become a contractor an opportunity to do so. It also allows current contractors that want to grow the opportunity to grow. It's in our interest to have the number of buses that we need. We have a few contractors that have been successful and felt like they can handle multiple contracts, and we got a husband and wife team. The current contract caps the number of contracts that a contractor can have at 6. So if a husband and wife wanted to do well or wanted to do more, we've got a few that a husband has his own company and has 6 routes. Wife has her own company and she has 6 routes. So they're paying double bookkeeping, double taxation, all the things that run a business, they're doing that double. We looked at that. If these contractors are able to handle 12 contracts and they want to grow and handle more, why should we hold them back? Why should we cap it? And the contractors came back at us with 10. They felt, I'm sure they got that number talking to some of these larger contractors that felt like that's where they would be comfortable. So they wanted to increase it. We had a lot of conversation about this, and we thought, if we've got contractors that want to grow, why do we want to put a cap on them? So we elected to leave it open. So they have an opportunity to grow. If they want to have 50 routes and can manage them with buses, God bless them. I'd like for them to do it. So that was one of the few things that we did. But our goal through this contract, there again, promote growth from within, the drivers that don't have contract, that want to become contractors, and then those that want to grow, let them grow. Because the more they have, the less issues we have. We also, the ultimate goal is for, until the board deems necessary, that Rutherford County Schools is to provide transportation for all students who need it. That's our ultimate goal. We went through that. This contract has been out. I think the contractors have had it for a couple of weeks. It's been out. I did receive a couple of calls today, one from a contractor and one, from a concerned citizen is the way I'll put it. But they had the same question. There seems to be some confusion, and I told both people that I would address it tonight to make sure that there's no misunderstandings. The question was about section 4.1, bus route and route awarding, and if the board will allow, I'm just going to read this. The board, through the Director of Transportation or other designee, will have absolute authority at any time to plan, establish, alter, consolidate, or abolish bus routes for the efficient operation of Rutherford County School System. There seems to be confusion between route and contract. This specific section is not about abolishing a contract. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about a route. And I'll give you a prime example. When we rezoned year before last for the new Rockville High School, basically all of the Riverdale High School routes were abolished. They went away because all those routes went to Rockville. The transportation department had to come up with all the new routes for Rockville. A lot of those drivers' routes changed that year. So they were under contract with a particular route one year, and they had another route the next year. So this section is pertaining to abolishing a route to institute another route. And when we do this, and it's not in the contract, but it's part of what we do, we look at those contractors, how many miles they're driving, how much money they're making, and we do our dead level best to make sure that they don't lose any money. If they had 70 miles on a route, they may have gone a little bit further from where they were going before, but we got them a route that had 70 plus miles. Very rarely does it come into play where we have to cut a route. It is possible, though, due to growth, due to unforeseen conditions, something come up crazy that we weren't anticipating, that we could have a driver that might have a 70-mile route that goes to a 50-mile route. We're going to do our best not to do that. But the intent of this language is not to abolish a contract. It's to give us, the transportation director and his team, the authority to change routes mid-contract. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to let Ms. Page speak to the legal side.
I think when that concern came up today, it made complete sense, because you'll see in 4.3 right below it, we actually use /contract. So it would be understandable that that would be perceived that way. So what I would propose tonight, if everyone's, obviously we can answer questions about other sections of the contract, but one thing I talked to with Ms. Scott, Heather Scott, who's the attorney for the contract group that came together, who's been fantastic to work with, good advocate for a client, but an easy person to talk to and work with. What I proposed to her, and she didn't get a lot of time, it was right before this meeting, is that I clean that up. We'll remove the /contract below, so that's not confusing. And in that 4.1 section, what I can do is add a quick blurb that says, this shall not result in the termination of this contract. For termination of contract, see section 8, right? So we'll cross-reference this section. I want anyone to be able to pick up this contract and understand what it does. You shouldn't need a law degree to read a contract. You should just be able to pick it up and read it. So I think that was really good feedback from our community. I feel comfortable with us making that change and having that to you for the 4th, so you'll be able to see what it looks like. And hopefully that'll help resolve any of those concerns. It was never the intent, but we do use those words interchangeably a lot, so I definitely understand where that came from.
That was really the only question that any of us got, prior to tonight from people outside. If the board has questions, we'll be glad to answer those now. And when we get through with the questions, I asked Jason to put together a demographic of what the age of our contractors, what do we look like? So Jason's got some information like that. So if y'all have questions, we'll be glad to get them answered for you at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Lee and everybody that was involved in this process, thank you. I know how agonizing putting together contracts like this can be. This, I'm assuming what we were given in our packet is the draft of what's being proposed to the board.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a correct assumption?
It is correct.
What concerns me, but my question is, when you look through this, there's nothing in here in the scope of this draft contract that tells me what's the difference in what's being proposed to us now for the renewal of this contract as compared to what we have in place right now or last year.
You talking about money-wise?
Talking about anything that would be considered or thought of a significant change between the current contract and...
When we met with the individual board members this week, we provided a packet, which we've provided you one tonight. In that packet, there's 3 different pieces. There's the original contract that we sent to the bus contractors. There's the contract that they sent back to us marked up in red. And then there's this final piece that we brought to you tonight.
I don't have one in my packet. Another board member was kind enough to provide me with one, so I do...
Jason laid one up there prior to the meeting.
Pardon?
I don't know where it went. We laid one up there.
No, I don't have one, but anyway.
Okay. We can get that for you.
So between now and Thursday, if I had any questions about those comparisons, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You can call Jason or myself.
Because obviously I don't have time to look through and start comparing it now. So
Yes, ma'am. That's why we provided that's why we wanted to provide all 3. Where we started was what we call our first draft. Then the one that we got back from the bus contractors, and then the third and final is the one we call the board contract, which is the one we brought tonight.
Okay.
So all 3 pieces are there.
Okay, so tell me again, the things that are marked in red represent what?
What the contractors came back to us as things that they either wanted to change or things they wanted to add.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other board members?
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions, just for clarity. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Lee and Mr. Everett for the time that you took out to meet with me on Friday. I try to make it a practice to, when important issues like this are coming up, any way to discuss with those who can help me understand them better in advance of meetings. So I deeply appreciate the time, nearly 3 hours I think we spent going over this. One of the things that we did touch base on was the 0.92%. And forgive me, I just had it. And it is on page 11. And I had a call about clarification of the language on this, or maybe some understanding. In the event, I'm talking about period of operation and district closure, item D, number 2, I guess that is. It was unclear as to whether this, and maybe I've read all of these contracts multiple times over the weekend, so forgive me, they kind of run together at this point. It was unclear to this person that I spoke to as to whether this 92% would become effective when we close schools in the event of like a pandemic, like we just experienced last March through May, or if it was a virtual distance learning situation. So, and I'm as confused as the question is that I just blurted out. So if you can help me with this.
I think that's a good point. And Ms. Scott before today emailed me saying what we probably need is to define what in-school days mean. And that would help clarify that section. So we did today talked about some language tweaks that really go to nothing substantive that changed. There was a request for a substantive change that we've rejected that you'll see in that highlighted packet related to mechanical repairs. However, everything else was really language tweaking. And I told her I think that's a good idea. Give me a proposal of what that looks like. So the intention is obviously anytime that the school buildings are actually shut, we were thinking about a pandemic period where schools are truly, truly closed. That was the original intent of this section. We hope it never is ever used. I don't think we plan for it to be used, but that was what we originally intended. So we want to define, right now we have it as they cover all classroom days, and if all schools, the whole district is closed for a consecutive 14-day period, after that 14th day on the 15th day, we would reduce pay by 8%.
Okay.
Ms. Page, what about the number of days that students must meet? And this past year was an anomaly.
Yes.
Where they waived that.
Right.
I mean, unless there's something that's going to occur that, again, that's a little bit more impactful.
Agreed.
My point being, it looks to me like we go into inclement weather days, and we know after 10 days, that's what we usually budget out.
Right.
That we go into adding on to the calendar.
Yes. So that, and to Mr. Spraugh's point, that makes this even less likely to apply, because the reality is even this year we attempted to get a 180-day waiver and we were denied. And so the reality is most of the time our contractors are going to make up that 8% on when we have to add those days to the calendar, since they're going to be paid for all whatever days that we're in. So typically we have 191. We hope we use them all, down to 180 if we use all of our weather days. And then after that, they're going to be tacked on to the end of the year, which we addressed later, saying that they'll get that 8% difference back to them, and they'll be paid for any day they drive. So the hope is that this truly will be a section that is never used. That's what we want. However, we want to be prepared so that we know where to go if we ever had something happen again, because we all learned a lesson, I think, this last May. But we think defining in-school days as a full closure, no students attending instructional time, something like that would be helping to clarify if we do the distance day. That I'll talk with these two gentlemen here and make sure they're good with that, and try to bring back a definition for that section to you.
Okay, so just we probably will never do this, but just for the sake of my understanding,
Yes.
say we were to go as a system under this point to a month of distance learning. The kids are learning from home, no buses are running because there's no transportation. Does this take effect, or is this only when there's no instruction whatsoever, like we did from May to March to May?
What would you like the intent to be, I guess, would be the question there, because we can do it either way. So I think we need to define which one of those we'd like to do. Would we like the contractors to be paid while one of the controversies, as you understand, and we've been very open with our contractors about, it was hard to justify to our taxpayers and to our commission board paying full price for buses that weren't running, even though we know the contractors are business owners that have expenses that are happening anyway, just like the rest of us. That's where we got that 8%. That's what we estimated we could say wear and tear and fuel likely coming off the top would be. So that number was backed up by some actual math. So if we think that being parked because students are distance learning, we can look at that. However, we have to remember a lot of our students are special needs students, and some of our at-risk population will still be receiving likely in-person service if we're talking a pandemic scenario again. So we can define that how you'd like to make sure that's right on how you all feel from a funding standpoint you'd like to do it.
It would appear to me that needs to be extracted and set aside. I mean, you need to have the inclement weather, and then you need to have something catastrophic or like a pandemic.
The intent of this was to be more in line with a pandemic where you had 14 days straight, everything's out.
Yeah.
And then that 15th day, we know we're not going back. Inclement weather days are handled in another section.
But here's the issue, though, okay? Currently, if we do all distance learning, we're still getting funded.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't work well. The language, to me, doesn't work well when you're trying to put it all in there in the same line item or the same part. There needs to be something. Let's be honest. The pandemic hit us. I mean, unless you were living 100 years ago, it surprised us all. We haven't experienced this before. That needs to be set out alone by itself. I mean, you're a lawyer. You tell me.
I think that would actually be an easy change. What we could do is go back and have it just like our last contract with inclement weather. If we're closed for weather, we're just paying you. Okay, we're not going to worry about it. That's what we've always done. We won't worry about it. But we will define it as weather-related closure. The challenge we were trying to address is that we did use inclement weather days for COVID because we didn't really have a mechanism in place. But now that we do, we can break that out as a second section and say for catastrophic closures or closures related to some of the language we would put in like a force majeure clause, we can break that out as its own section. I don't think that'll be too challenging. And we'll say if it's one of these catastrophic events that we're closed for and students are not learning, we are completely closed because we know when we have distance learning, we are going to have some transportation going on, hopefully. And if it's catastrophic, no one's distance learning. We will break that out as its own section, but still have it be 14 consecutive days. On that 15th day will be the 8% drop. So they get 2 weeks of padding in case something crazy happens, essentially.
That was the intent.
Yeah. So we can just break that into 2 paragraphs. I think that makes sense. Thank you, Fred. That's a great question. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Johnson?
I'm okay right now, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Sharp?
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. I know the pandemic hit us by surprise, but last year, I think it was this week, we had a tornado. Is there anything in there, say, and I know y'all can't plan for everything, but what if we did have a tornado and we had to reroute, and we might have to go to another school? Another completely different route. Is there anything in there that would cover that?
Yes. So we did not pay to be impacted for single school closures. So for some reason, maybe we just needed to shut down the school for a week. All of bus contractors would be covered because it's a short period of time. And I make a great point, Ms. Sharp, we might be in the position where we need to move those students to another location. We've made that 4.1 we talked about is exactly where that comes from. That gives us unilateral authority to say, hey, for the efficient operation of the schools, for this obvious reason, we need to modify routes. You're still going to get what you need. Later in the termination language, you'll see that if we do modify a route or have to offer a new route, that we are required to do that. So no contractor should lose a route or they could sue us under the contract, being honest. And we also have to strive to make sure that we always strive now to make sure that those are similar mileage for them. Can't guarantee, we didn't want to guarantee that because of exactly your scenario.
Well, most of them, if you had to move a school, route's going to go up.
Yeah.
It's not
And
going
it
to
could
go
be
down.
more,
It's
and it
gonna-
could,
if anything, it's
I mean,
gonna go up. So that was the whole intent of 4.1.
4.1.
But to answer your question, if it's just one school, everybody else is still status quo.
and it could be more. The second question, this contract has an increase in pay on this. I believe it's a 14% over the 4 years. Can someone give me the dollar amount of that, please?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Sharp. The total dollar amount at the conclusion of the 4 years would be $3.2 million is the total increase over the 4-year, the lifespan of the contract, at the 5%, 3% each year following that's in front of you.
Okay, thank
I
you.
would like to emphasize, since how this question came up, just so this is something new that we've never done before. This is industry standard. If all of these contractors went away tomorrow, and I don't want that, but if they did and we had to go hire, I don't know, one of the large vendors that's out there that does this for counties, contracting, this is standard language in all of their contracts. The only way we would get an outside contractor to even consider working with us is this has to be there. And if we're going to make a contract that's industry standard, I feel like, and I may be out on a limb, but our contractors should be treated with a similar contract with those same guarantees as if we had to go outside and hire someone else.
You know, you make a good point because they're not our employees. This is a service that we're providing,
Yes.
or they are providing.
Are you done, Ms. Sharp? Mr. Lee, help me understand then, when you talk about industry standards, are you relating that to the dollars that we're talking about, increasing the contract, that 3.2 million over 4 years, or are you talking about the actual language in terms of the contract?
It's actually both, answers your question. Standard contracts, and Jason has reviewed more of them than I have, but we've gone to out of state as well as in state. We've looked at counties that do all single source outside. What does their contract look like? What does contract? Another map, just like what we do. Other counties that are just like we do. And there's others that own their own equipment. We don't want to run over them. So we look at all different types of contracts. We called them up commercial contract, and they told us what language was in it. Jason's got a network of the other school transactions. That 3% is industry standard, and each year is industry standard. So to answer your question, that's both 3% and the guarantee each year.
Couple of questions on that. One is talking about swapping routes. If one driver route and another part, one another part. It says that you can do that with written permission. Is that all you have to do is connect the director of transportation?
You got here is that what you're asking, is it contract one swap route per convenience? This is already yes to the director approval to swap routes.
That process, tell me or give me a letter, spell out what they're wanting to do, if it makes sense for our contractors and our system. If it's the best thing to do, we approve that, so they're still able to.
Okay. What if, and this would probably pertain to contractors got more than one route, wanted to say somebody was giving up a route next to where they're already running, could they give up one, say they had in Smyrna and get one in Murfreesboro?
No, sir, that route would be awarded per our contract awarding policy. And that would go through priority 1 list, priority 2 list, and then priority 3.
So
You wouldn't be able to work out a behind-the-scenes deal. It'd have to be awarded per policy.
Okay. Appreciate y'all's work on this.
Any other questions?
I've got one more. So we are to, this rate increase, we can up it.
You talking about
The rate increase is what's proposed.
Yeah, you can raise it, you can lower it, you can make it go away, you can leave it what we've proposed, the 3%.
And for the general public, what is our budget for transportation?
This year's about 19.1 million, just shy of 220 million.
Thank you.
One thing I would like to say, I appreciate y'all's looking through this. It is convoluted. I mean, it is difficult if you're not used to reading it, and Jason and I have been reading these for quite some time. One thing that we are asking is that due to our time factor with school coming up on us next year, and Dr. Sullivan alluded to it a little bit, we're going to be providing transportation. So we're going to need this contract to be able to do an amendment, come back to you guys. We hadn't even told the contractors yet that we're going to be requesting for volunteers, paid, not free, to drive summer for this gig. So we need this contract in place because we're going to have to do an amendment just for this special summer school. Plus, it's got to go to the county because it's unusual. So we're hoping that this Thursday night, some shape, form, or fashion, we can get these couple of changes made that we want, get them to you for Thursday night, and then you all feel comfortable enough voting on something that we can take to the county commission. I appreciate y'all's patience. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lee, that begs another question, I guess, for me. And I'm pretty sure I probably know the answer to this, but when we talk about transportation costs for the new summer program, I don't suppose there's any state money there to help fund that, is there?
No.
We're going to use some, go ahead.
We'll have to use our some of our ESSER 2.0 money.
Do we, are we even at the point where, as far as enrollment numbers and stuff, where we've even come up with a rough estimate of what that summer transportation might cost us?
You got a number?
We've took a educated guess at the number of students. I forget how many buses it was, Jason.
What was the number of students?
We've got currently budgeted 2 buses per site, and then budgeted each route has to be built as well based on who registers. So we have to have the students, I think, to April 27th so they can build the individual routes. And we're
going to have to build a specialized routing system just for this summer school, and at the same time looking at the rezoning for Plainview and doing rerouting for all of that. So we're going to get the summer school first, routing for Plainview. We'll have to build a special route just for it.
For budgeting purposes, we're removing $250,000 out of what we were budgeting for our high school to be able to move transportation. So we're budgeting $250,000 for transportation.
So I don't know if this would even come up as a concern or not, but when planned for the summer school program, what would happen if we had a contractor that wanted to have those routes available for? How is that decision-making process going to work? And again, it may not even be a question that makes sense because
we haven't had that conversation because we're just now getting from the state to be able to. My initial thought to answer your question would be by seniority. That would be my initial thought. And number one, that means, and I'm predicting we're going to have enough contractors that want to participate. That's number one. And if we do, then how would we do it? And I would say by seniority, but that's a conversation. That's why we got to have this other amendment that goes with this, and we haven't even had time to discuss it.
Sure. Okay.
That would be my initial thought.
And in transportation, and kind of talking to them, we did not envision having a way to do transportation until Friday, till we found out that the state had a minimum number they wanted us to hit. And so when I said it came out of nowhere, it really, the 4,000 came out of nowhere. So this all happened since Friday.
Today's Tuesday, we're still working on the fly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I know this is a whole lot to digest, and I would ask you to go through it one more time before Thursday night and vote on this, but I do appreciate our bus contractors. They've done a great job. I'd like to continue their working relationship with those guys, and I think it is a fair contract. Is it everything we want or everything they want? Probably not, but I think it is a better contract than what we've had in the past. I appreciate everybody's hard work on this. All right, moving on to number 14. We want to just hold off to
On the insurance update?
yes.
You've gone on, we'll bring up the names for the committee on Thursday night, but you've already gone up with the amount that's going up.
All right, number 15.
All right, just a couple of things. First of all, before you guys passed out the ESSER 2.0, as you can see at the bottom, the total we're anticipating is 19 million, something's off here anyway, 492,507. This pot, we got together and kind of looked at this and identified ways that has impacted us during COVID. We know we're going to be using it, some of it for our learning loss to supplement some things, especially in high school. But the accounting part, you can see it's broken down by certified benefits, food service benefits, classified benefits, substitute costs, PPE, COVID preventive purchases that we've made, unemployment expenses, subsidized school nutrition funds for distance learners, reimburse the general purpose fund for 55 cafeteria employees, and COVID pay increases that we used along with what we got with the state in order to provide one-time non-recurring raise for everyone. That total there is $7,286,591.62. In instruction, in the ESSER, we're going to allocate some for our learning management system. We're going to allocate some for our case assessment benchmarking, our ESGI, our staffing for our summer school in 2020 and 2021. This is for school, the curriculum intervention materials for 20 and 2021, and purchase 500 student devices. This total is $6,185,000. Capital projects, this is one thing that we're excited about. These major HVAC overhauls in these schools. We're also going to do the McFadden walls in the tuck point and the McFadden windows and major roofing in John Coleman Annex for a total of $5,500,000. So all total, we've got over $19 million costs that as we go through the project. Now, this is already, we've actually waited for some more to put in the application that will be submitted on the 13th of March. And this money will be coming our way. Now, there is talk about ESSER 3.0, and what that comes out to be. This includes the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that is currently working through Congress. I think it's supposed to be taken up by the Senate this week. And then some say maybe hit the president's desk sometime in mid to late March. That's something, that's just all right now that we know. In terms of other things that's occurred, we all heard the news about Rutherford County Schools had an issue with 1,000 vaccines that were allocated to us last week. Let me go through the timeline. On February 25th, we did receive doses of the Moderna vaccine here in Rutherford County. It came over to the annex part of our campus here, and it was received by our material and handling person, who then brought it to Ms. Winters. Ms. Winters had previously purchased a combination refrigerator freezer, and also had acquired what's called a digital data logger. She took the 1,000 vaccine doses, which she didn't really know that was how many she was going to receive, and she placed some in the freezer because she knew that here on campus we were looking at somewhere between 285 to 300 vaccines here. Now, because this vaccine, it must be, cannot be stayed refrigerated for over 30 days, she then took those additional ones and placed them in the freezer. Unfortunately, we found out later on that our freezer had not been approved. Our refrigerator had been approved, but no combo had been approved. I received a call from the State Health Department at 11:30 on Friday, and informing me that because of this freezer that these vaccines were no longer useful for us. So we had to return those back to the local health department. About 12 o'clock, I met with Ms. Evans and Ms. Winters. We went over every process that involves handling of these vaccines. Of course, during that process, we went back, and on January 26th, we retrieved the previous email that gave us the okay to go on and approved our refrigerator. It said in writing, it said the refrigerating part is approved, and then it goes, however, the freezer is not approved. Oversight on our part. Sometime about 5 o'clock that afternoon, myself and 2 of our charge nurses, along with Ms. Winters, met the governor's COVID task force. One of the things that they were more interested in was logistics. Quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, I think logistics was one of the biggest issues with the vaccine. Anytime you're providing a service, or anytime you're providing something like this, there should have been more checks and balances along the way. There wasn't. I'm not making excuses, but I'm just being honest. One of the things when they were received here, they should have been received by someone who they requested their ID along with a signature, making sure that that was going to the appropriate place. That wasn't a problem, but it could have been a problem. The next thing was the multitude of information that they had to read. It was about this thick of how to handle the vaccine. Unfortunately, they didn't get through that in time. There was no one that checked off that they were approved in terms of understanding how to handle the vaccine. However, long story short, we were fortunate enough to receive some from the local health department. We here on Saturday vaccinated 302 of our employees, and at St. Thomas Rutherford, we vaccinated 697. So one, if I'm not math is correct, one short of 1,000. On Saturday morning, I received an email from Dr. Fiscus with the State Health Department, and I'm going to just read the bottom part because, for the sake of time, it says, "We recognize the process of receiving the vaccines is complicated, and this incident helped our program understand where there are opportunities to improve training and communication, especially with vaccinating partners that are less familiar with storage and handling of the vaccine. I want to assure you that we are examining our processes and putting new procedures in place to ensure our partners are positioned to be successful in these efforts. I'm sorry for the stress this has caused you, and especially Ms. Winters. All of this was done with the best that teachers and staff of Rutherford County Schools could be vaccinated as quickly as possible, and will continue to do that when asked." So I say all this. This was nothing nefarious about this. It was an unfortunate incident, and I don't blame anyone. I'm just very thankful that we were able to provide the vaccines for our staff.
Any questions? Thank you, Director. Ms. Bratton, do we have anything on TLN? Okay. Ms. Johnson, FRN? All right, general discussion.
Mr. Spurlock, will there be more days for our teachers to be able to, because 1,000, there'll be more days, right?
They're still taking, they're at State Farm and over the health department, they're still taking that, but those that are already vaccinated, I think it's either 4 to 6 weeks, and they'll get second dose.
Right. But it's still open, they can still come.
It is. Now, one of the questions was asked to me, how many of our staff have gotten the vaccine? It's difficult to tell because I know we vaccinated, I think, over 600, Mr. Evans, that were prior to this rollout.
Approximately, yes.
They were getting ready to
set their own appointments up either in this county or another.
Right. What I'm talking about, if you'll recall, there was about 600 vaccines that was donated to us. Two different areas. One that we used at Eagleville, right, and one that was because of it was something about the snow or something like that they were.
Right. So during the snow week, there were a number of appointments that got canceled at the hospital. Gave us the hospital priority for our employees to, if they could make it, just we had a link that went out. They signed up for them, and it was a real last minute thing just because they were trying to use the doses. And we had several hundred that received those.
I think it was about 600. So it's really difficult to us to know how many have been vaccinated because a lot of them have gone out of county. A lot of them have received those, like 600 that he's referring, and also 600 at Eagleville. close to 1,000 that we did last Saturday. So it's really difficult to see. It's quite a bit. I'm going to limb and say we have anywhere from 1/3 to half. And I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty close.
So, Mr. Spurlock, a couple other questions. So, the clinics that we're doing and when we're vaccinating the teachers, are they actually our staff, our employees that are administering the vaccines?
Here they were our nurses, and the over at St. Thomas Rutherford was their people.
Okay. So will we also continue to be responsible for storing the doses of the vaccine moving forward?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
The discussion. Nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.